Hi, Greg Weldon here with Weldon Live, and this is Tuesday's Weldon Live, even though it's Wednesday morning, and I have something already kind of in the works for Wednesday. We have Japan, we have China, we have more on the U.S., but we want to stop here and take a look at Canada, because you have some numbers and that are really interesting, and more than that, really almost just skipping down through all of this that I just wrote to get to the bottom, because it's almost like, I came to the bigger conclusion at the end of this live, and we'll definitely feed it into, the next couple of publications, because what's happening in Canada is likely to happen in the U.S. It's kind of already happening, if not happened, in the EU. You know our view on the EU. It is the point of attack in the next, event, so to speak, as it relates to finding out, can central banks ride their monetary white horse to the rescue once again? And I say no. It's going to be much more difficult. Can they? Maybe. But it's not as certain as it was in the past. And that's a big change. And what's happening in Canada is testament to this. Because the BOC, has raised rates. They're at 175. Inflation's at 170. For all intents and purposes, they're neutral. But inflation just came down from like 2.5. It was actually at 3% at one point this year. So going from a 1.5% real negative policy rate to neutral, and if inflation falls further, which the PPI data suggests it will, the export data suggests it will, the import data suggests it will, the retail sales data suggests it will, that means from here, BOC policy will be tight and tightening without them doing anything unless they cut rates. Dig on that for a second. This is big to me, and it's almost an epiphany I'm having this morning. I mean, and we flirted with this thought process without putting it in such black and white terms last week after Powell's comments, where, they raised they continue to say they're going to hike rates while they cut their inflation forecast to a level that is below target and below where it is now. So in other words, they said, not only is policy going to tighten when inflation falls, but we're going to make it even tighter. Of course, now we know that's not happening because they've shifted policy because they had to. Rather, they shifted focus. They did a retreat because they had to. Because to say that was insane. All right, we're cutting our inflation forecast to below 2. We're at 250. Inflation's at 2.2, but we're going to keep raising rates. That's nuts. And we said it was nuts, and eventually that led to the reversal and the about face by Powell. But that doesn't make it better. That doesn't fix what's happening here at all. It doesn't. And if you think a trade deal with China is going to be the savior here, I'll remind you, $375 billion is the trade deficit annually with China. It's less than 2% of U.S. GDP. It's not an engine of growth. You even the playing field. Does it give some relief? Yeah. Does energy price declines give some relief to the consumer? Yeah. But it doesn't change anything. It's not stimulus. It's not tax cuts. It's not rate cuts. It's not QE. It's not any of that. All right? Let alone what's going on with Apple. I have to talk about this for a second at the risk of staying on this chart way too long, because to me this is critical to the bigger picture. And we'll fly through Canada because really this is way more important. Tim Cook, on CNBC, I mean, his commentary is, to me, jaw-dropping, all right? But more importantly, it gets back to what I've been saying for the better part of 2 years. These companies, Verizon, Comcast, Samsung, Apple, all these tech companies that have, just flooded the market with all these products that are now kind of, bland and all the same and so on and so forth, all right? You're not going to grow these companies, and they need growth. They don't need to stay flat. They need growth, and they need it to accelerate so you can maintain the stock price. This is the game now, all right? And when you have basically, everyone that's going to subscribe, for the most part, is subscribing. You can talk about China all you want, but that's the problem. There's the growth. You don't have that in the U.S. in terms of Apple, in terms of Verizon, in terms of Comcast. Those three in particular, to me, are going out and being able to grow their companies by increasing the number of customers in the U.S. by millions. It's saturated. It's done in that sense. And thus these companies have to increase their revenue and maintain that growth track by fleecing their existing customers for all intents and purposes. And I say that because when I buy a new Samsung phone and the charger in every other phone, and then they changed it to make it water resistant, so on and so forth, all right? I get the whole technological dynamic. I'm not unsavvy in that respect. They flipped the point of where you plug the phone in, where you plug the speaker in, all right? So now I got to buy a new plug, and I have to buy a new armband to wear it when I work out, and the whole 9 yards. And the cord is 18 inches long and could not possibly even reach from the plug on the floor to the desk. I have to put the phone on the floor, or what? Go out and buy a new cord, buy a new charger, buy a new armband thing, because that's how desperate it's become. And Apple is perfect example. And what does this guy says? Here's his comment with Jim Cramer yesterday. We have a culture of innovation at Apple. Okay? It combines with loyal customers, happy customers, and a product pipeline that's never been better. We have a virtual ecosystem that is vastly underappreciated. Bullshit. All right? I'm saying it, bullshit. All right? Underappreciated? That's what the entire stock price is built upon. All right? The willingness, the blind willingness to follow the Pied Piper off the cliff to the point where you're going to buy a new phone every year for $1,000. Not happening. I said that when it tipped the scales at 4 figures, that this was the beginning of the end. And here you are. And to say we have a virtual ecosystem that is vastly underappreciated, what does that even mean? It's meaningless. It's a bunch of double talk. This guy is not, the same visionary that created the product pipeline, which has never been better. As in what? What's in the pipeline? What is new and innovational that's in the pipeline? Another new phone? Come on, man. The writing is on the wall. And what does he do? Then he blames the market. The market, quote unquote, the market is quite emotional. We look through that. Like we're better than that. This is just bull at its highest level. And I'll tell you what. This ain't over. This ain't over. This is bigger. This is going to expand. What we're talking about here in terms of Canada is huge. So let's get to it. And when you throw in the Apple thing, which to me just set me off my chair. Like, is this guy kidding me? Holy mackerel with the, buzzword media rhetoric.